Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another wonderful Parsha class on the portion of Vayera. Very fascinating Parsha as the Torah introduces us to the plagues that God brought upon the land of Egypt. So we have a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe, which the Rebbe talks about the Parsha. So if you have the book, I hope that you have the book, whether you're listening on Zoom or you are listening it onto Facebook. But if you don't have the book, we are going to the book of Exodus. You can at least follow with in some of the readings. We are going to the book of Exodus, chapter 8, verse number 18. Chapter 8, verse number 18. So over here, the Torah is talking about actually the fourth plague. And the Torah says as follows. If you don't have the book, I just want to make an announcement concerning the book. If you don't have the book, you can still order the book, because the book is on the whole book of Shemos. It's all the classes in the book of Shemos. It's only $20, I believe. Call up the office and get a book today. So let's go to the student page number 15. And if you have the book, student page number 15, let's go to the verse of the Torah. The Torah says, "V'iflisi b'yom hahu," and I will separate on that day es Eretz Goshen, the land of Goshen, asher ami omed aleha, the land of Goshen, which my nation, the Jewish nation, lives in the land of Goshen. Leviltir yosham arev, that in the land of Goshen will not be the plague of Orev. Orev is wild beasts. There will not be wild beasts in the land of Goshen. That means the whole land of Egypt is going to be a bunch of wilde chayes, a bunch of wild animals running around the whole land, besides one place, one city in the land of Egypt. And that will be the city of Goshen. Why? Laman teda ki ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz. So you'll know that I am God. I am God in the midst of the earth. So the question is, this is the fourth plague. The plague, there's seven plagues in this week's Parsha. This is the fourth plague. So the question is, what happened the first three plagues? The plague of blood, the plague of frogs, the plague of kingdom of lice. What happened on the first three plagues? Did the first three plagues also have a differentiation between the Jewish people and the land of Egypt? Or actually, the first three plagues, also the Jewish people suffered the first three plagues? Because seemingly, it only when it comes to the fourth plague, the plague of wild beasts, does the Torah say that over here I will make a differentiation. Comes the Ebenezer in text number 2. If you don't have the book, you'll have to follow in, I'll say that the text, and you'll follow with me with that statement. So comes the Ebenezer, famous commentator on Chumash, and he says as follows. Vayachperu, it says, the verse says, until you have the book, is in text number 6, in text number 2, page number 16. It says they dug, Vayachperu, the Egyptians dug, or they dug. Many have said that the water that was red like blood when in the hands of the Egyptians became clear in the hands of the Jews. If that is so, why is this miracle not recorded in the Torah? Why doesn't the Torah say that by the Jews there was water? It says everybody dug for water and they found blood. If by the Jewish people there was water, why wouldn't the Torah say that? So comes the Ebenezer and says, in my view, following from the simple meaning of the scripture, the plague of blood, frogs, and lice included the Egyptian and the Jews and the Hebrews. Both the Jews and the Egyptians suffered with the plague of blood, lice, and frogs. These three plagues did not cause much harm. Only from the plague of wild animals, which is the first text in your book, the fourth plague, only in that plague of wild animals, which was more destructive, and the subsequent plagues that followed, 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th, did God distinguish between the Egyptians and the Israelis in Israel. So here, the Eben Ezer comes with a phenomenal thing, really a phenomenal thing, and says that that the Jewish people suffered with the plague of blood, the Jewish people suffered with the plague of frogs, the Jewish people suffered with the plague of lice. This is amazing. Many commentators say that. How can you say that? They'll see in the next text. Many commentators disagree with the Ebenezer. And we go to the Rabbeinu Bechaya in text number 3 on page 17. Here we have a text. It says, Rabbeinu Bechaya says as follows. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, I will separate on that day, in so much as the first plague was relatively stationary, it was unremarkable that they occurred in the central part of Egypt and not in Goshen where the Jews lived. By contrast, wild animals wreaked havoc everywhere. When these beasts came on God's command from the desert to destroy everything, it is only natural that they would reach Goshen as well. So comes the Rabbeinu Bechaya says, no. The reason why it's not mentioned in the story, in the first plague, in the Tzvadim, in the Kinim, is because those plagues were relatively in one place. The water came from the Nile. The frogs came from the Nile. So therefore, for the frogs and the water and the blood to reach Goshen didn't get to there. That's why it doesn't mention these plagues in the land of Goshen. But wild animals, they come from everywhere and they reach a far distant area. So that's what the Torah had to say. The wild animals didn't come to Goshen. But really, there was beautiful drinking water on the first plague in Goshen. The frogs didn't reach Goshen. And neither kingdom came to Goshen where the Jewish people lived. And wild animals, that you would think that wild animals would be able to reach in every part of the land of Israel, of Egypt. It should have got to Goshen. Therefore, the Torah tells us, no, it didn't get to Goshen. The Jews were only spared because of a miracle by God. When it came to wild animals and the rest of them, where it should have reached everywhere. So comes the Torah and tells us it didn't reach them. But not that the Jewish people suffered the first 3 plagues. Brings down another statement of another sage. Here we have a very blatant expression against the Ebenezer, the first interpretation, text number 4. Rabbeinu ben Izri, who is known as the Radbaz, lives in the 14th century. Now, Avraham ben Izri writes, the Ebenezer writes, that Egypt and Israel were both subject to the plague of blood, frogs, and lice. It's forbidden to believe such a thing. especially since Scripture itself indicates the opposite. And Egypt will not drink from the water of the river, and all Egypt. You see, it says Egypt, it doesn't say the Jews, it says Egypt dug around the river. The implication being that the Israelites did not need to do this. So what is the Ebenezer talking about? Comes to that bus and says the Ebenezer is wrong. The Ebenezer says that it was the Jewish people that didn't suffer also. The Radbaz says you're reading the verses wrong. If you read the verse in the Torah, you'll see that the Torah says that the Egyptians didn't found the blood, and they dug to find water. The Jewish people didn't have to dig nothing. The Jewish people had beautiful fresh water on the first plague. The implication being that the Israelites did not need to do this, since they were drinking from the river's water. And so it said, continues the Radbaz. He says, so it says, when Moshe Rabbeinu warned for the frogs, it says, into you, talking to the Egyptians, he says, into you and into your people. And then later it says, will they depart from you and from your house and from your servants and from your people. So you see, the Torah openly says that the frogs will leave the Egyptians. It doesn't need to leave the Jews. It never got to the Jews. It never came to the Jews. Implied that they were not in Israel with the Jews. The same is true with lice. From where it's clear, and we can infer to where it's not clear. I fail to understand if the plague was also on Israel, then what proof did it hold for the Pharaoh that he should send Israel from the land? If everybody is suffering the same plague, so that's a natural, so the Pharaoh would say, what are you talking about? This is a natural phenomena. And the proof that it's a natural phenomena is that everybody in the country is suffering, the Jews and the Egyptians. So that the Jewish people did not suffer even the first plague of blood, then you say, wow, that's a natural phenomena. The Egyptians, you take a cup of water from the Nile. In the Egyptian cup, it's blood. In the Jewish cup, it's water. That is a miraculous phenomenon. But that there's a plague, and everybody is suffering from the plague, Jew and non-Jew. Everybody would say that's a natural phenomenon. It's a plague. Everybody's suffering with the frogs, so it's a natural phenomenon. So comes the Ebenezer and says, it comes the Rabbaz and says Ebenezer is wrong. I shouldn't have bothered. Look at he writes. I shouldn't have bothered wasting ink on such sort of things, but I did not want to give any space for those to speak falsely regarding the words of our sages. So comes this sage, and he Proficient argues with the first the Ebenezer, and he says he's totally wrong. And there was, God forbid, no plague of the Jewish people on the Jewish people for the first three plagues. So the question will be on the Radbaz, why did it say it on the fourth plague only? But let's talk about the Ebenezer. Let's go to the Ebenezer. Why would the Ebenezer say that on the Jewish people there were the plagues? I mean, why would he say that? Why would the Ebenezer say that on the Jewish people there was the first three plagues? Why? Why would God? The biggest question, besides the question that how would that prove to the Pharaoh that it's that God is doing it if the Jewish people are suffering with the Egyptians? The real question is on the Ebenezer, why would God make the Jewish people suffer? Why would God make the Jewish people suffer on those first three plagues? Why would he do that for the Jewish people? What was the point That's really the question in the Ebenezer. So we always have, it's very interesting, comes another view, the Rambam, Maimonides, in your text number 5, in your student book, on page 19, he brings down a Maimonides. That's why, again, it's very important to get this book. First of all, you'll be able to follow in with the class, but even more so, you'll be able to get you see how beautiful, before we get to the chassidus of the class, you see how on a subject I've given you already have 3 sages that talk about, and we add another one in a moment, but we see that how they argued on the story of the Torah, on the plagues. It gives you a beautiful, because you should realize in general how many mefarshim there are on every verse of the Torah. There's many mefarshim. On this we just mentioned over here, Rashi and the Ebenezer and the Ramban and the Radbaz, and now the Rambam. Maimonides comes and tries to bring in another way to look at it. So now the Maimonides says as follows. Look at the words of this text. For every plague that God brought upon the Egyptians, the Torah language indicates that it was on the Egyptians. The Rambam says, if you look at the words of the Torah, Rambam says, you look at the words of the Torah, it sounds like the Radbaz. It sounds like that the Torah is talking to the Egyptians, that they would suffer, except the plague of lice. When it comes to the plague of lice, it doesn't mention over the Egyptians only. It mentioned the plague came to the country. It doesn't mention that only the Egyptians. While it does not say it explicitly, it is known that lice did affect the Jews. But not as a punishment. And so it did not actually cause any suffering. So comes the Rambam. He's like a middle part over here, like he's saying maybe the Jewish people did have this plague, but it was not a punishment by the Egyptians. It was a concept of a punishment. It was a painful situation. By the Jews, it was there, but not a painful situation. So that's another opinion. You have it in your text, in your book, in student page 919. You have over there a diagram which brings you all the different these 3 basic sages: the Ebenezer, the Radbaz, and the Rambam. And you got it right there. You have it right there. According to Radbaz, there are X's on all those boxes, meaning nothing happened to the Jews. According to the Ebenezer, the first 3 plagues, the Jewish people suffered with those first 3 plagues. And according to the Rambam, it somewhat suffered in this plague of lice. So you have a third opinion. Now I'll give you a fourth opinion. The fourth opinion is a statement of the Baal Shem Tov. In text number 6, a statement from Yaakov Yosef of Polnoi. He was a student, one of the famous students of the Baal Shem Tov, and he said a statement of the Baal Shem Tov. So again, if you have the book, it's on page 20. If you don't have the book, listen to the statement of the Baal Shem Tov. This was said in his name. He said, I heard in the name of my teacher, which is the Baal Shem Tov, that the 10 plagues were directed at Pharaoh specifically, for Pharaoh is associated with forgetfulness. Pharaoh is the guy that says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember. Pharaoh can go through 10 plagues, one after another, a break of just a couple of weeks in between one plague and another plague. It was not like a year break. It was like a 2-3 week break between one plague and the next plague. And he goes from plague to plague, and he doesn't remember seemingly the second plague. Pharaoh seemingly forgets what happened a couple weeks ago. And he hardens his heart, and he goes through another plague. He seemingly feels bad a little bit by the plague. He asks God, he asks Moses to pray, and then he forgets, and he has to go through another plague, and he forgets. He is seemingly the guy who forgets. To begin with, he says, I don't know, God, and then he forgets from plague to plague. And what happens? For example, the plague of Tzvadeya, the plague of frogs, which is the second plague, the root word safar indicates light. Safar Deya. If you take the Baal Shem Tov said, if you take the word Tzvadeya, you divide it in half, take the first 3 letters, and then divide it for the last 3 letters, last 2 letters, you will have Tzvar Da, Deya. Tzvar comes from the word to illuminate the light of knowledge. That means the Baal Shem Tov said to the Egyptian king, it was a frog. To the Jews, it was a light of knowledge. The Baal Shem Tov said, in essence, the Jewish people, there was 10 plagues. There were the 3 plagues by the Jewish people. But by the Jewish people, these 3 plagues was a positive thing. And by the Egyptians, it was a negative thing. Deya means knowledge, is the opposite of forgetfulness. We say it every day in our davening, the 4th blessing. Ata chaynin la'adam das. The Eibishter gave us a great quality, a great talent, a great concept within our being that we're given the concept of das, of knowledge. Ata chaynin, we say the expression is you gave chinin, you graced us. La'adam, to a human being, das, that he has the capability of knowledge, not to be in denial, not to be forgetful, but actually to have das, to know exactly what is going on. The worst thing a person can be is when a person doesn't know what happened. Forgetfulness. You know, in Jewish law, if a person did a sin, he brings a korban chatos. Now, korban chatos is an animal, or if you don't have the money, you could bring a bird's. Can go lower and lower to ultimately flour. But let's say there's a korban asham. Let's say you have a person doesn't know if he did a sin or not. He's not sure if he did the sin. I don't know. I don't know what I did. I'm not sure if I sinned or not. So there the Torah tells us you have to bring an animal. What happens if I don't have money? You get the money. Go get the money. Well, I don't have the money. Why if I sinned? If I don't have the money, I can lower the korban. If I don't know if I sinned, then I have to bring the animal. Because it's worse. Our sages tell us it's worse if you don't know what's going on. If you don't know if you know you sinned, then you can bring you can ask for forgiveness. You can actually bring a korban. But if you don't know if you sinned or not, that's worse. How can you be a person that you don't know what you're doing? How can it be a situation you don't know, you forgot? You're out of control. That's what we learned in Tanya today. That a Russia lieben b'reshusam. And the opposite, lieben ein b'reshusam. They're out of control. Basically, their emotions are in control. When their emotions are in control, then you have a situation where you don't know what you're doing. And that's an out of control situation. That's what the Dalton Rebbe and Tanya said, that's a concept of death. That's the opposite of life. Life is when a person's in control. When that's why you can do mitzvahs or you chas v'sholom do the opposite. When a person has passed away, he cannot do mitzvahs, can't do avedis, but he can't do mitzvahs either. Because he's out of control. He's lost control. Comes the Baal Shem Tov and says that this plague, the concept of Pharaoh, the aspect of the Pharaoh, actually there's many, the Pharaoh is called the Torah Paro. Paro means he's given up his control. He's given up. He's actually Vayachsa Hashem es leipare. God hardened his heart. That means he was to begin with in the power of his emotions. God didn't. Why did it say God strengthened his mind? No, because the Pharaoh was given over to his heart already. And the Eibishter does need to strengthen his emotions. When a guy strengthens his emotions are in power, his ego, and that was the Pharaoh and all dictators in general, their ego is their power, their strength is their power, not their intellect, but their strength and their emotions and their ego is in power. You need to push their ego a little bit. You got them. They'll do whatever they'll do. They will continue to do it. You know what they're gonna do. And that's the opposite of what the Eibishter wants from a human being. And that's why this plague, Sfaideia, to the Pharaoh, it was a plague. To the Jew, who has Das, who should have Das, it was the opposite, Sfaideia. Thus, it came as a plague to the Pharaoh, and to Israel, it was Sfaideia. And then the Baal Shem Tov adds list, leads them to the words. And I think this is the most beautiful part of this teaching. He says, understand this, and there is charm in the words of the wise. Having v'divrei pi chacham chen. If you understand this, the Baal Shem Tov in essence said every other place, just give you one analogy of Tzvadeya. If you understand this, the Baal Shem Tov says, then there is charm in the words of the wise. That means the Baal Shem Tov said in essence, everything that comes from the heaven, to A, it could be a negative thing. To B, it can actually be a positive thing. That's the expression we find later. That God says that every curse that somebody will give you, God will change it to good. Because, that's the expression of what Yosef HaTzadik said a couple of weeks ago, that you thought to the negative and God thought to the positive. The Baal Shem Tov says every plague, maybe the Jewish people also had the plagues, but to them, so comes Baal Shem Tov says, according to Chassidus, according to Kabbalah, you can actually say, maybe they both went through it, but each went through it differently. To the Egyptians who were in the throes of impurity, it was a plague. To the Jews, it was actually everything that would happen was actually a blessing. And you have to be able to understand, and that's why I think the Baal Shem Tov ends off, understand this, and there's a charm in the words of the wise. If you'll be able to go understand this, you'll be able to go through all the 10 plagues and understand the beauty, maybe the beauty of these 10 plagues. But let's go back. Let us go back. The Rebbe wants to go back to the Ebenezer. And the Rebbe wants to be able to understand that even not to the Baal Shem Tov in its simple interpretation of the simple shot of the story, There should also be a positive. There should also be a lesson to the Jewish people, even in the aspect of seemingly of a plague, of a negative thing. So let's go to the first three plagues: the plague of blood, the plague of Tzfadim, and the plague of Kinnim. What was the purpose of these plagues? What was the purpose of the plagues in general? What were the purpose of the plagues? Why did God bring 10 makkahs to the nation of Egypt? Why? Could have done the one makkah. You actually see when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Pharaoh the first time, he says to him, "Your firstborn will be dead. I'm going to smite your firstborn." God could have done the last plague right away, smitten all the firstborn of Egypt, and the end of the story, send the Jews out of Egypt. It would have been a straight message, and that would be it. What was the purpose of these 10 plagues? Esem Makkos, the 10 plagues that God brought upon Egypt. So there are three basic things that the Torah keeps on expressing. And the Rebbe says, in essence, these three things are important to us, to every single one of us, as we go through life. These three things that God, and that's why you have to remember the going out of Egypt every day. It's one of the 6 remembrance that a Jew has to remember. So we have to remember these concepts every single day of our life. And that is, number one, is that to break the Egyptians, that's self-understood. To break Klippa, you have to break evil. To be able to change the world, you need to break evil. Number 2 is to punish evil, to punish the Egyptians. The Egyptians need to be punished. It's not this time to break them and they can just walk away. No, there needs to be a rectification of evil. And that's the meaning of punishment. There needs to be a rectification of evil. Number 3, the most important thing of this whole process is revelation of God. And really, Chassidus tells us that they go hand in hand. It's actually today in the Tanya, the Chittas of the day. The Alter Rebbe teaches us that to be able to reveal godliness, you need to break klippas. You need to break klippas. You cannot reveal godliness if evil is still there. That's why the ultimate prayer of Jew is that God will eradicate evil from the world. Then you can have revelation of godliness. You cannot have a revelation of godliness in the world if there's evil in the world. If Klippa, if the Mitzrayim, the Meitzar, the contraction, the Pharaoh, the forgetfulness, the Pharaoh, the stubbornness of the Pharaoh, and the evil of the Pharaoh, and whatever that represents, if that's not broken, so that's the truth. If God would have brought the last plague, you wouldn't have broken the Egypt. It would have been a moment of breakage. And the Jewish people left Egypt. God said, no. There needs to be a process. There needs to be a process. A process of transformation of evil. Before you can even have Matan Torah, there needs to be the process of the rectification and the deciphering of Egypt. And that's a lesson even to today. Because if you live in a situation where there's darkness and there's evil, you need to ultimately work on that and break this evil situation. And ultimately, not only break this evil situation, to ultimately transform this evil. And to ultimately, while you're doing the breakage of evil and the transformation, is revelation. Revelation of God. And that's what you see in the next 3 expressions of the Torah. So in text number 7, if you don't have a book, you can open a Chumash. We're looking in Exodus chapter 8, verse 17. The Torah says, it openly says it, For if you do not let my people go, behold, I will incite against you and against your servants and against your people and against your houses a mixture of non-toxic creatures, and the house of Egypt will be filled with this mixture of of these creatures, as well as the land upon they are. So that is from the beginning. God says the purpose is to break Mitzrayim. The purpose is to break Mitzrayim. You have to break the Egypt. We're going to have to bring Egypt to its knees. That's what we're going to have to do. The Jewish people are going to have to go through it with it, because we need to break Egypt. If we're not going to break the Egypt, we're not going to be able to have the purpose of this whole Gullus. Really, Egypt is really an analogy of all exiles. And the truth is, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shlach no bi'atishlach, that since Yetzias Mitzrayim is not going to be the ultimate redemption, let's wait for Mashiach. And the Eibusha said no, because we need to have the first physical breakage. We need Yetzias Mitzrayim. We need the first breakage. Because God broke Mitzrayim, Chassidus explains, that's why we can break our Mitzrayim. If God wouldn't have broken the first Egypt, we would never break our own evil. God showed the Jewish people that you need to break Gullus. You need to break evil. If we want to reveal, we need to break our own evil. Forget about the evil outside. We need to break our own evil. If we have an evil tendency, which everybody can talk about, I'm not going to tell anybody over here that they do or they don't. But if we have if I have an evil tendency, which I know we all have midas rayis, we need to break it. Pushing it aside, forgetting about it is not going to help anything. You have to break it. Now I ask you a question: why don't we break our midas rayis? Why don't we break our evil tendencies? You know why? Because we make it into a deity. We make our evil tendencies into a god. Chas v'sholom. You got, as people might say, take me the way I am. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. This is who I am. It's my nature. I'm an angry person. I'm a jealous person. I'm a yenta. Whatever my evil might be. I can't break it. What does that mean? You made it into a god. That was denial. That was the Nilus. The Nilus by Mitzrayim was the god, the deity. The Tzvadim came from the Nile. What was this? What was the Kinim? Kinim, you know, the story of the blood. The Egyptians made the blood too. The Tzvadim, the Torah says, the Egyptians brought out the frogs. When it came to the Kinim, they could not do. That's when they said, this is God. We can't do it. So even the Egyptian big knackers, their major priests and whatever they were called, the leaders of the deity said, you know what? This is out of our control. God first broke the deity. Our deity, what is my deity? My yesh. My ego is my deity. And we got to break it. We got to first break it. Then we can go to the next level of rectifying it. That's the concept of punishment in Torah. There's no concept of punishment. Why in even Torah, Gehenim, the concept of Gehenim, hell, is a concept of punishment, but it's a concept of rectification. It's no punishment for the sake of just beating somebody up. Oh, revenge. God wants to get revenge. You do something against me, tit for tat. I'm going to do something against you. God forbid. We look at punishment as an act of rectification, cleansing. So therefore, God said, I'm going to be not to Mitzrayim. I mean, the Egyptians might not have taken it that way, but we should surely take it that way. The Eibishter, first we need to break it. Then we need to change it. And then brings us to the third thing, to reveal it. And that's the second verse. So therefore, when you go to the second verse, which is in Bereshit in Genesis, if you don't have the book on page 21 into the book 2021. If you don't have the book, we're in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. Over there it says, and God said to Abraham, you shall surely know that your seed will be strangers in the land that is not theirs, and they will be enslaved and oppress them for 400 years. And also the nation that they will serve will I judge. And afterwards they will go forth with great possession. So here is the concept of punitive. The Eibishter says you can't just walk away from evil. It needs to be changed. It needs to be cleansed. It needs to be punished, so to say. Punitive. I need to judge what I have done. I just can't walk away with it. That's why I mentioned today in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, Merirus. There's one way to say, I'm sorry. I did a mistake, I'm sorry. And then there's the concept, I feel your pain. When I feel your pain, then it's a true I'm sorry. But if I just say I'm sorry, okay, I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I don't feel your pain. Then it's not true tshuva. Tshuva is when I feel the pain. That's what in Tanya it's called merirus. I'm bitter from what I've done. I feel some bitterness. That's when I feel punished. I feel bitter. So that's when I do something negative to somebody else, or do to God. I do something negative, and I feel the pain of that negativity. And what is the purpose of all this? What is the purpose of this whole journey? Is the third verse, text number 9, page 22 in your book. If you don't have a book in the Chumash, Exodus chapter 7, verse 17, this is the most important verse. Kaya Mar Hashem. This is what the Eibishter says. B'zois Teda. All this is for one purpose. With this you will know Kani Hashem. With this you will know that I am God. Through this makis of dam or whatever else, you will know that I am the Eibishter. Gili Elikos. And that's really the purpose of all these makis. That there will be a revelation of God, that not only the Jews would know that there's a God in the world, but the Egyptians will know that there's a God in the world. And that's the ultimate objective of this whole situation. So therefore you have the 3 first plagues, the Rebbe says. The first plague of the Nile was to break the deity of Mitzrayim, which the Jewish people needed to go through it too. The second plague of the frog was again to break the deity of the Egyptians that came out of the Nile, which the Jewish people needed also go through it. And the third plague of the Kinim was again. And that's why in text number 10, Rashi says, he struck their deity and then he struck to them. And then it came to the third plague, which I mentioned in Shemais, text number 22, in Exodus 8:15, it says, whatever these Khartoum, these guys, these witchcrafters said to Pharaoh, it's the finger of God. But that doesn't help anything. The verse continues. So to the Jewish people, what was the lesson to the Jewish people? It was the finger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To the Jewish people, we saw the finger of the Eibishter, that even the Khartoumim saw here is the finger of God, the Kinim, that God brought about something that even the witchcrafts of Egyptians could not do. Couldn't have been a natural phenomena in any kind of situation. So not only you couldn't even say nature had a power. This was a total something that's above nature. Totally broke the natural phenomena. The Eibishter wanted to show a Yid that ultimately everything comes to the Shemayim. Don't create a deity of anything in the world. Which we also create deities, just like the Egyptians. We do the same. So the Rebbe says that's why the first three things that Ibn Ezra says the Jewish people also went through. Because we do go through these things. Not only Jewish people in Egypt went through these things, the Ibn Ezra is telling us we go through these things today. We struggled with these issues today. So it's a universal message. That's what the Rebbe says. The Ibn Ezra wants to tell us that this is a universal message, not only to Jews, not only to Goyim, but to each and every one of us, to Jews too. So look at text number 11, the Rebbe, the wording of the Rebbe. Based on the above, we can understand, as Rashi explains, God brought the first two plagues to strike their deity. For this reason, the first two plagues had also an effect on the Israelites, water, in so much as their deity was being struck by the plagues had to be whatever their deity were to be found. If not, Pharaoh could have thought that this particular section of his deity, the part of the Hebrew territory of Goshen, was indeed greater than the Holy One, blessed be heaven forbid. So the Pharaoh himself could have said, you know what? If the Jewish people would have had water, the Pharaoh would have said, look at that. The deity, their God, couldn't affect the Jewish people's water. So he would have gone so far. The Pharaoh would have gone even further. Once a Rebbe, I think it was a Kotzker Rebbe, who said you have to actually learn from the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was so stubborn. The Pharaoh was so stubborn. We should learn that L'Tov, how to be stubborn. Imagine the Pharaoh, after 9 plagues, if you come to the 10th plague next week's Pasha, the guy has gone through 9 plagues. Moses comes to him and Moses tells him tonight, at midnight, every firstborn is going to die. And the Pharaoh had a firstborn. And actually, he himself was a firstborn, some say. So Moses says to the Pharaoh, every firstborn is going to die. Now, any person that went through already 9 plagues, what would you do? Would you go to sleep? You would stay up, and what's going to happen? What is going to happen at midnight? I mean, you decide what's going to happen. No, what does the Pharaoh do? The Torah tells us the Pharaoh goes to sleep. He goes to sleep. Now that takes chutzpah. That takes nerve. The Pharaoh had to be awoken in the middle of the night. He went to sleep. So what does that show? You have to have. Look at now. If you take the chutzpah in the negative, what do we learn from the other way? To be chutzpah in the positive. We Jews have to have chutzpah in the positive. If the Pharaoh can go to sleep and have such confidence in himself, we should have confidence in God. We should go to sleep and have confidence in the Eibishter. Once asked a person, the Gemara says, once asked a Tana, how do you live such a long life? He said, I went to sleep at night. I had no worries, like a baby. I went to sleep at night without worrying. put my trust in God. We go to sleep at night, we're worried. What happened in the day? What's gonna happen tomorrow? We're worried. That's why there's a prayer before we go to sleep at night. We say a very powerful prayer. We say we forgive everything. No worries. The day is done. There's no worries. That takes guts. But that's guts in the positive way. I put my trust in the Eibishter. I don't have to worry. I'm not worried about what people did to me. I don't want anybody to be hurt if they ripped me off or they took advantage of me. I forgive them. Look at that prayer. There's a very powerful prayer. I said this many times. You should look at that prayer, the prayer before we go to sleep at night. See what you say when you go to sleep at night. And if you said it, and you said it with true meaning, you would take a sleep like a baby. I'll tell you the prayer. Since I keep on saying it, you should all say this prayer. I've said this many times. But if you say this prayer, and if you said it with really true meaning, you would have a really peaceful night. And the Pharaoh did it in a negative way, and we should do it in a positive way. You want to hear the prayer? This is the prayer. Master, it's in your Siddur, on your Lubavitcher Siddur on page 141. Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anybody who has angered or vexed me or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor, anything else in this that is mine, whatever, accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech, by deed, in this incarnation, any other, may no ban be punished on my account. May be the will of my Lord and my God and my Father. I shall sin no more, nor repeat in my sins, nor shall I again anger you, nor do wrong in your eyes. The sins I have committed, erase it. Your abounding mercies, but do not suffer in severe illness. May my words of my mouth, my meditation of my heart be accepted before you, Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Bingo. If you said this prayer with full intentions, you forget about the world. Everything that happened that day is over. Anybody ripped you off, fine. It's fine. Nobody be hurt. If you can go to sleep that way, sleep like a baby. You wake up in the morning refreshed. Why don't we wake up in the morning refreshed? We don't sleep at night. If Pharaoh went to sleep, we should be able to go to sleep too. And have a good, restful night. Why? Because we put our trust in the Eibishter. Pharaoh put a trust in himself. We put our trust in the Eibishter. That's the positive. That's the positive way of doing things. This class was called, is it much longer than that? No, I read the whole paragraph. No, I just read one paragraph for the Krishna Shomit. I didn't read the whole Krishna. Just that paragraph is powerful enough. This class is called, they called it the line in the sand. We need to have the line in the sand. We need to learn what the Rebbe, in essence, wants to express over here. We need to learn to have a line in the sand as Jews. That just like the Pharaoh, strength he couldn't budge in the negative. We need to have the line in the sand where we will not budge in the positive. In the Torah, that's called loiplug. In the Gemara terminology, is that loiplug, we're not going to make any differences. We're not going to change things. We're not going to look at what's happening in the world around us. And this sikh was said many years ago, but it fits very well what's happening in the world around us. As Yidden, we'll not lose our focus. That's getting involved in deities of the world. Shtusim, Vavolim, which we turn into deities. We only have one God. We only have one Torah. And we have one nation. And one land. That's all we got. We got nothing else. Everything else is there to distract us, make us forget the Pharaoh, make us forget of these concepts. And we need to chas v'shalom not to be like the Pharaoh, who God needs to harden our heart very easily. God harden his heart very easily. God can harden our heart also very easily that we fall into the Nadishkeit, the deities of the world. We need to chas v'shalom not to do that. That's the lesson that Rebbe says. And make a loy plug, no difference of what's happening around us, or things have changed, or things haven't changed, or we think things have changed. Nothing has changed. The Rebbe continues to run the world. The Pharaoh, nothing changed. What do you mean nothing changed? There was plague 1, nothing changed. Plague 2, nothing changed. Plague 3, nothing changed. Plague 4, nothing changed. You do that same way. Nothing has changed. The Rebbe still runs the world. Yad Hashem. The Rebbe still runs the world. Hasn't changed. Baruch Hashem. Let's learn about Maimonides in this concept in text number 12. Very beautiful in the Maimonides. Let's read. It's a long one, but let's try to read through this. Question. What is this? Is Maimonides. It's a statement of Maimonides. It's in page 24. Shuvas Rambam. Question. What is the law with regard to a group of people who are largely proficient in prayer? The question was, why need a chazan? Why need a chazan for? The rabbis instituted a chazan because those who cannot read. That's why you have a chazan for. So the question was, should the chazan repeat the Amida? Everybody can pray. You go to synagogue, everybody can pray. So imagine you have 10 people davening, they all can pray. So why does the chazan need to repeat the Amida? Why does the chazan repeat it? If everybody said it. Okay, the chazan is there for those who can't, but everybody in this minyan said it. Everybody can read today. We even get it in English. So you can read it in English. So why does the chazan repeat it? If everybody read it, whether in Hebrew, English, Spanish, Chinese, everybody read it. So why do you need a chazan for? That's a general question. Why is it needed? They asked the question to the Rambam. Why need a chazan? Why need a cantor? So, as not to embarrass those who aren't proficient in reading, right? As per the original edict, or perhaps should he not, so to refrain from uttering a blessing in vain. The question is, you're asking the chazan to repeat God's name in vain. After all, most people already discharged their obligation during the silent Amida. So why does the chazan repeat it? Or perhaps the congregation should not pray at all on their own, leave it to the chazan. Instead, so they're not to wait to establish a sacred tradition. So here was the Rambam's answer. In so much as our sages instituted that the chazan should repeat the Amida for those who are not proficient, the chazan repetition is certainly not a blessing in vain. Even if there aren't any people in the crowd who did not already describe it, the chazan should still repeat the Amida. Because once the rabbis instituted something, that's what we do. That's what we do. As Jews, that's what we do. Don't change what we do. This is how we ought to look at any rabbinic edict enacted for whatever reason. The edict is not in place for only as long as the reason still stands. Rather, the edict is now enforced forever in the event that the reason comes up. This means that we ought to follow an edict regardless. For if not, the sage's word would be limited in context. Would then be compelled to look at each synagogue for a person who had not been proficient in prayer, so the chazan will repeat the Amida for him. Such behavior is obviously not what the edict is all about. When the rabbis instituted that a chazan should repeat the prayers, the rabbis didn't only institute it because there was somebody who was not there, because the rabbis instituted that there should be a repetition of the prayer. So therefore, even though all the people over there can read it, And you don't gotta find somebody who can read it. The edict, the edict, or the gazeta, or the takana, or whatever you want to call it, is still there. That is, you see, that's the Rambam was playing into what people say today. Oh, but it's not needed today. It's not important today. I can take every law in Shulchan Aruch and Code of Jewish law and say it's not important today. Maybe it was important then. It's not important today. Torah Nitzchis. Torah is everlasting. Shulchan Aruch is everlasting. You cannot start giving in and start playing around with Jewish law. So text number 13, a statement of the Medrash. Said Rabbi Ami, when the Jewish people are described as stubborn, people normally understand this as criticism. But in fact, it's a compliment. We would not have survived the thousands of years of exile if we would not be stubborn to the good. If we would not learn from the Pharaoh and use it out to the good, to be stubborn to the good. Don't give in into the world around us. Don't lose focus from the world around us. If we can be stubborn in that aspect, sure, we shouldn't be stubborn in certain things, narishkeit and stupidity, in worldly issues and in fights, but when it comes to our focus in spirituality, our focus as Jews, the purpose that the God gave us a Torah, there we shouldn't pass shouldn't cross the line. God called us a stubborn nation. Am Kshei Oiref, that we're a stubborn nation. We are a stubborn nation. We didn't give up Torah mitzvahs throughout history, thousands of years, when the nations of the world wanted us to give up Judaism. And we didn't. We were stubborn. And that's why we're here today. It is due to our stubbornness that we've been willing to be killed for our Judaism. Therefore, what's the trick? So Rabbi Yochanan Kaira in Shulchan Aruch tells us a trick. He says one should have set time to learn Torah. You should have a set time. Every single one of us should have a set time in the learning of Torah. The set time to learn Torah should not be altered even to allow for a large increase in revenue. That's in Shulchan Aruch. Don't give up your time of davening. Don't give up your time in study. Don't give it up for anything. Why should you give it up for anything? Comes the Frierdiker Rebbe. This is all what we're learning from the three first plagues, my friend, that Rebbe is saying. This is what we're learning. This is what is teaching us. And even according to the Even Ezra, that the three first plagues happened by the Jewish people. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says in text number 15, there are things that people do only because everyone does them. For example, certain cultures' norms are conventionally considered proper, and they are crystallized into unalterable laws. Such unreasonable habits ought to be transformed through one's own endeavors. Instead of remaining below reason, they should be elevated to above reason. Business commitments, for example, pressing as they may be, do not generally overrule the times that convention prescribes for eating and sleeping. They do, alas, sometimes set aside or even cancel the fixed times that one should regularly schedule for the study of Torah and prayer. Why would you not push off your sleep for a business adventure? Why would you not push off eating? But you're ready to push off your prayer times. You're ready to push off your learning times. A man feels accountable to his soul should ask himself, is there any wisdom in such a conduct? For who is the man who knows when his time will come? How do you know? How does one know? My father would always say, everyone dies, but not everyone lives. And we have to learn how to live. And the Eibishter gave enough time to live, to be able to make business, to be able to have family, and to be able to also be a Jew. To be able to also have time in the day for prayer, for learning, for doing mitzvahs. There's enough time for all of the above. And we should all make the time. We should all realize that we need to put a line in the sand and say, no, just like I need to eat, and I need to sleep, and I need to go to work, and I need to be a decent human being, I need to be a Jew. And you have to be an action to that. You have to be stubborn. I need to be a Jew. I'm not going to give away my Yiddishkeit for nothing in the world. I'm not going to give away my connection to a synagogue for nothing in the world. I'm not going to give away my time of study for nothing in the world. We're going to end off this class with a text of the Rambam. We can end it off already, but we'll end it off. It's in the class, but we'll end it off. It's very late. There's a temperament that Rambam writes, Maimonides, text number 16 on page 28 in your book. There are temperaments with regard to which a man is forbidden to follow the middle path. He should move away from one extreme to adopt another. Among these is arrogance. If a man is only humble, he is not following good path. Rather, he must hold himself lowly and his spirit very unassuming. That is why Scripture describes our teacher Moses as very humble, and not simply humble, was very humble. Therefore, our sages direct, hold oneself very, very low. Also, they declare, whoever is arrogant is as if he denied God's presence, as implied by the verse, and your heart will be haughty, and you will forget God, your Lord. That's where you forget God, when you become haughty. That was the Pharaoh. That was why the Pharaoh, when Moses came to him, the first thing he said, I don't know God. And then he became very forgetful. Furthermore, they said, whoever is arrogant should be placed under a ban of ostracism. This applies even if he's only somewhat arrogant. Anger. So arrogance is number one. We got to throw away arrogance. Anger. This I'm so sad, but I think that many of us suffer from anger. I once asked somebody to take a class in anger management, and I said to myself that I myself should go to an anger management class. If I'm telling somebody else to do it, I should do it myself. And I did. I went to an anger management class. I remember it was many years ago. It's like a 6-week class. Everybody should take an anger management class. It'll be good. It'll be something good we should all learn. Anger. Our sages says anger is one of the worst things that you can have. Anger is also an exceptional bad quality. You need to put a line in the ground for anger. You need to put a line in the ground for arrogance. You need to put a line in the ground for anger. You need to say, I will never get angry. I'm going to stop this. It is appropriate that one move away from it and adopt an opposite extreme. He should school himself not to become angry even when it's fitting to be angry. If he should wish to arouse fear in his children and household, or within the community, if he's a communal leader and wishes to be angry at them, to motivate them to return to a proper path, he should present an angry front to them to punish them, but he should inwardly be calm if you can do that. If you can fake anger, maybe to just teach somebody else, but when you are angry, the other person can feel your anger, can taste your anger. So therefore, something that Rambam says you have to work, we have to work on going away from anger to the fullest extreme. He should be like one who acts at a part of an angry man in his wrath, but he himself is to be an actor. If you can be an actor, that you can show anger but not be angry, then you should do that. But if you're angry you're angry within yourself, you should not be. You have to go the other way. The early sages said, this is continuing the Rambam, anyone who becomes angry is like a one who worships idols. That's why I say we all need to go to anger management class. If he's a prophet, his prophecy leaves him. The life of an irate, an angry person, is not true life. That's an important thing. Rambam writes these two things are important to put a line, to be stubborn, not to get angry, not to have arrogance, to break evil, to change evil, to reveal godliness. That's where we should be stubborn. Don't be stubborn in the narishkeit of the world, in my evil tendencies. That's where I need to be the opposite. I need to put the line. I need to know where to be stubborn, and I need to know where not to be stubborn. Once read someplace, it says, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice. Moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue. We need to know when to be moderate. We need to know when to be extreme. We need to know when to be moderate. We need to know when to be extreme. I say this to all of us because we're living in a very extreme times, very frightful times. In these times of very angry times. Don't lose your focus. Follow the Torah. Follow the Torah. A Jew needs to follow the Torah. He needs to follow anything what the world teaches him. I don't care from this side, that side, or any side. He needs to follow the Torah. If you have a question, ask Rav. Open up the Shulchan Aruch. Learn Torah yourself. Follow the Torah. Let the world not become your deity. Let nobody in the world become your deity. That's the 3 plagues. Let only the Torah be your guide. Let only God be your focus. Let only Yiddishkeit be our agenda. The Rebbe would always say the statement of the Gemara, Anan Pola Diyamam Anan. We are the workers of the day. Meaning, we are the workers of light, not the workers of darkness. That needs to be our focus. If whatever you're doing is bringing light to the world and joy and happiness and love, keep on doing that. If it's the opposite, you might be creating another God in your agenda. Be careful. It's a beautiful sikha. It's very deep and it's very powerful. And every person needs to learn it, understand it, and then come to their own conclusions. But I would tell you again, if you have a question, ask a rabbi. The way you should understand what the Torah wants you, how the Torah wants you to express yourself, how the Torah wants you to act in this time. And if you think the Torah wants you to be arrogant or to be angry, fine with me. But as the Rambam says, anger is, Torah doesn't want you to be angry at all. As I just read the Rambam. You can look up the Rambam. If you don't have the book, you can look up this Rambam. It's Rambam, Mishnah Torah, the law of character. Chapter 2, law 3. So you can look up this Rambam, read it to yourself. And the Rambam writes there clearly that anger is something you have to eradicate. The only time anger is good if you need to educate. Then, even then, anger has to be faked. You are not allowed to be angry. You have to fake that anger. You have to be totally calm. Anger in self is idol worship. Very powerful, Rama. Let us not be angry. And the only way we won't be angry is that we are confident in our emunas Hashem, in our belief in God. We are confident that we have belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't have belief in ourselves, and surely not belief in others. We have belief in God. And that belief in God gives us certainty in the way we're going and where we're heading and what we're trying to accomplish in this world. I wish you a beautiful evening. God bless you all. Tomorrow we continue learn chitas of the day at 8 a.m. as we continue every morning at 8 a.m. to learn Chumash and Tanya. I invite you all to come, and every day make it a time in your life to learn Chumash and Tanya every single day. It's going to change your outlook to the Torah, and your day will change your day. Make it a commitment to come and learn chitas every single day. We learn it at 8 a.m. I invite you all. Have a wonderful and beautiful night. God bless you all. I love you guys.